So here we are again. This is the second part of this video. I've taken some blankets off and now I want to try and do a body score um, of my herd and just give a general idea of how these guys are doing and maybe what I might need to do to improve things for them. So I'm going to start with the first guy, and I'll just put the camera on it's on a selfie right now, so I'll just switch things around so that you can see him. And you won't be probably seeing me anymore. You'll be seeing the horse's body parts and my hands as I go through the various body scoring and areas that I look at. So we'll do that now. Okay, so this is my older gelding. He's about 19. You saw him earlier with the green blanket on, so now I've taken the blanket off and we can get a look at him, and I'm hoping the lighting, it's quite bright and we have a bit of contrast with the snow, and he is a dark horse. So as you can see, he doesn't have a lot of angular points on him. I like to look for roundness in general, just when I first look at my horse. But he does have some indents where there could be some additional body condition. And body condition, when we're body scoring, is really just fat. We're looking at where fat sits on that horse in the right places so that it looks nice and round. So he's got a very prominent wither here. And then if we look at the change between the wither and the neck, there's a bit of a dent here. So I would like to see this more filled in. He doesn't have the best neck. Oh, we've got some nice tangles there. He could use a bit more meat on the neck, more fat on the neck. There's a little pocket of fat down here, right above the knee at the elbow. So that's a good thing. We like to see a little bit of fat there. There's a little indent here under the wither, and again with the coat, it's hard to see this, but when you put your hand on and feel, there is a drop here. So there's some body condition that's lost here. And this becomes a problem when you're putting a saddle on, because the saddle falls in this hole. So you probably want to have some extra padding here to lift that saddle up and keep it up off the wither. Looking at his back, it looks fairly flat here, but what I like to have is a bit more muscle running along the back. I can see there's a gap under my hand. Often what they do is they'll cup their hand at the wither, and then look at the cup and see how much. Now he's got a very prominent wither, and it's where you decide to actually do that cup. But you want not a really flat hand, because that, or even a drain pipe, because that would be a really fat horse. But you want to have not so much of a cup when you take your hand off. So he does need more body condition here. We want to probably have a little bit more fat along the back. So I can't really see the backbone, but I can feel it. So it is there. And then looking in the middle part here, we're looking for ribs. Now, again, looking at the coat, with this winter thick coat, you wouldn't see ribs on here. And if I put some pressure on my hand and just run my hand along the side, going down to the hip bone here, there's no ribs. I cannot feel ribs. There's a good layer of meat over the ribs. He's going to start walking away now because I'm poking and prodding here. Watch out, bud. So I'm getting ribs right about here. I can feel no ribs, no ribs, no ribs. And then right about here, which is in front of the hip, it's the last, I'm getting the last two ribs that I can feel. So he needs some weight to fill in those ribs. I'd like to have a little more coverage over those ribs. Also, if we look at the bum, there's some tail head here that I can see. That should be a little more fleshy and filled in. Oh, he's taken off on me. He just decided to, we're just going to walk up and get a little closer. So we can see there's tail head here. So I would like to have a little more coverage on his hind to fill in this area. I'm just going to give him a scratch to keep him happy. Stay with me. Good boy. So generally speaking, I would say he's a 4. The Henneke goes up to 9, and 5 is kind of a good number. 6 if you want a breeding mare, a brood mare. The horse has to have some fat in order to actually make babies. So this guy, he could probably use a little more weight, so we would probably want to add more calories to his diet. And I can do that by adding more fat to the diet. I can add a concentrate, which also would help as well for things like if your area is low in selenium, and adding some minerals that might not be in the hay. We can get that with adding a concentrate, and I can look at a concentrate that maybe has a higher fat content and a good protein content for him to add a bit more to his diet. Or I can just bring out the alfalfa pellets and start adding more to him, so he can have more protein to add on the weight. But it's a good idea to have something like a ration balancer to balance out the hay that you might have. And if your hay is deficient in certain things, that can help to do that. So now I'm going to look at the second horse. So this is my second horse. He's my younger guy. He's going on 7. So he's 6 going on 7. Quarter horse type. Well, he's a full quarter horse actually. So he's younger, and we can see he's just looking at his body. I'm going to step back here a bit more. He's nice and round. Again, he's got a winter coat on, so we want to get a more of a close-up hands-on. But just looking generally at him, he's got a nice round hind end, nice round at the shoulder. Looking at the wither going to the neck, there's not as much of a dip there, so there's a better straight line, so there's better conditioning on his neck. And here, there's not really any sinking going on. That's his shoulder, just because he put his head down and stepped forward, so the shoulder protruded a bit there. So he's got a fairly good conditioning here behind the shoulder, and also if we look at behind the wither and cup, there's a nice flat hand here on the back, so I don't have backbone protruding, but I don't have a drain pipe. There's a little bit of a dip here, so you can see that there could be a drain pipe starting if he does get fed much more richly. And if I go looking for ribs on the sides here, going back, I just take my hand and go back to the hip. I'm putting some pressure on it, sort of kind of dig for a rib, and I don't feel any ribs at all on him. So he is an easy keeper and younger, so it makes the challenge of keeping his weight a lot easier just because of his age. He's also got a nice little fat pocket here behind the elbow in the front. And then if we look at the hind end, I cannot see his tail head here. His tail is kind of buried, and there's nice fat here at the tail head. So he's got really good body condition. I would put him at a 5.5 or even close to a 6. I don't think I would put him at a 6, but he would be to me, he's a pretty perfect body condition score. And he's actually munching on some second cut hay right now. He's higher up in my herd as well in the ranking, so he does not have any access issues at all getting to the hays and the food that he wants. So he's a lucky guy. He can continue to do as he pleases, and he's just having no trouble maintaining his weight in the wintertime. So now we'll go to my third horse. Okay, so here is my third horse, another quarter horse. She's a mare. She is 11 years old, so another younger member in the herd. And she is the lowest ranking member of this group of 4. So I always have to worry a little bit about her access to hay and making sure she's getting enough to eat, because the others will push her off the pile. And she's very timid. She doesn't want to take anybody on. So she just walks away very placidly and doesn't argue with anyone. So looking at her, she's nice and round again. I like the roundness on her. I like the line from the neck to the wither. There's not really much of a dip there, so that's nice and filled in fairly well. Now I'm going to start coming a little closer and putting hands on. There's a little bite. There's a bit of a scab there. Somebody probably bit her. So she's got a little, that's just the shoulder. Her leg is bit back, so her shoulder's protruding there. She's got a little bit of a wither. There's a little bit of a dip, but not too bad of one. There's a real change between her back and her wither. So she's got a bit more of a prominent wither than my other quarter horse gelding. Her back is, there is a bit of a gap. I'm just going to change hands here so you can maybe see it better. It's not flat when I put, okay, just trying to get another better look at her hand here, at her back here with my hand, and I'm having trouble with the camera because if I switch hands, I have my fingers in the camera. So looking at her back here, I'm going to maybe change it to this angle. So I can cup a little. There's a nice fairly flat back. I can cup a little bit behind the wither, and I do get a little bit of a cup, but it's not very, very flat where if you're putting your hand, there is a gap under the hand. So I like to have a little more here, but she's doing pretty well. There's a pretty nice back here with not a lot of backbone that I like. There's not much of a ridge is what I guess I'm trying to say. So she's got a nice backbone. Looking at the ribs, if I start digging for ribs, I'm just going to run my hand again down the side here and go to the hip bone. And I'm doing a little bit of a dig trying to find ribs. And I actually find the last, let me just count, I think it's the last 2 or 3 here. So there's one here, one here, one here, and I can just feel this one. So the last 3 ribs I can feel, but this part, there's good flesh over. So she's doing fairly well this winter. Also, she has nice tail head here. This is nice and buried. There's no tail head protruding, and she's got some nice fleshy parts here. And she also has a nice little fat pocket. If we go back to the front area here at the elbow, there's a nice little fat pocket here. So she's doing fairly well, but I still, because of these ribs and the little bit of a dip there, I probably still would not put her at a 5. She'd probably be about a 4.5. So we do want to continue watching her and making sure that she's not losing any weight and not getting pushed around by the herd too much, so that I still want to make sure she always gets access to food and that she's happy. She's definitely not stressed. She was the one who was lying down earlier with the blanket on, and I actually had to wait a bit for her to get up so that I could do this video because I didn't want to get her up to take the blanket off. So I did a couple of other horses before her, and then she finally got up on her own. So she's quite comfortable to lie down in the herd. So her comfort level in the herd is not too bad, but she is the lowest ranking member. So if I brought in the other 2 that I removed from this herd and made it a herd of 6, I would probably have more issues having 2 bullies in my herd rather than just 1. So she's happier in this group of 4. And I'm going to leave things generally the same and just keep monitoring her along throughout the winter and just see how she comes out in the spring. And if we have to change anything, then we can add more to her diet then if needed. So this is the 4th member of this herd. This is my oldest mare, and she is about 22, and she's had some issues with COPD this year, actually really bad issues with COPD. I was actually very close to putting her down. She was wheezing, she was coughing at night. I would lie in bed and hear her coughing, and it was really hard to do that. I was medicating her with dexamethasone and some other herbal products to try and get her breathing issues under control. And also, I tried some homeopathic remedies to see if that would work. I don't think the jury's out on that yet. I don't think she looks that great. She was actually looking really bad in the fall, late summer, early fall. And so I had her actually out of the herd. I took her out of the herd and added some pellets, alfalfa pellets to her diet, and gave her access to the second cut hay, and she just tore my hay pile apart. So that wasn't great to do, but it was worth it to get her back up. She was so bad. She was coughing so bad, she threw her back out. And what happened was, it was either in the rib cage or in the back itself during our COVID issues here. She and I had blankets on, so I didn't really notice, and she could not put her head down all the way to eat from the ground. So when I put hay out for them to eat, she could access the hay when the flake was fairly high, but as the flake got closer to the ground, she couldn't finish her pile, and so she was missing out on those calories that she could have got if she was able to reach the ground. But because of her back issues, she couldn't do that. So then I had chiro done on her. I had 2 sets of chiro sessions done on her to help bring her back into better health. And I was also feeding her out of a wheelbarrow for a while so that she didn't have to put her head down that long or that low. And after the chiro, she was actually able to stretch her neck down and eat again, so we could get her back into the field and put her back on the hay. And things have looked better, along with also the alfalfa pellets to add the protein to her diet. But in the fall and summer, I could see this backbone, and it really bothered me. And actually, we can still see a little bit protruding. I don't know if the light's good here. You can see a little bit protruding here in the back. So this would have been much more pronounced when I was doing my assessment of her in the summer. And now she's filled in fairly nicely, so I'm really happy about that. She does have still a dip from the wither. She doesn't have much of a wither, but there is a bit of a dip here, and her neck isn't in the best condition, so it's kind of, there's angles on the neck. It's kind of hard to see in the light here. She's gray, but the lighting with the snow and everything. So I would like a little more flesh on her neck. She doesn't have, like, this is a bit dippy here. So to me, this could have a bit more weight put on it, a little more meat on this. She does have a little bit of a fat pocket here at the elbow, so that's great. And I don't really see prominent ribs, but it is winter and she's got a winter coat on. I like the fact that her hip is a little bit rounder. Earlier in the year, I did see this hip bone protruding more. It's filled in quite nicely. But now, as I do my little dig here with my hand, I'm just going to run my hand again down the rib cage to the hip. And I don't feel ribs here at the front by the wither and just passing the wither in the middle, but right about the middle here, I'm starting to count ribs or feel ribs. So I can count, if she doesn't leave when I'm poking here, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the last one, 5. So the last 5 ribs I can feel, and it's just like bump, 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 bump when you go over it here with the hand. So she needs more weight, and we're going to continue with the second cut with her because that's really helping, and the additional protein helped. But again, I could add a concentrate with more fat in her diet to help bring her weight up a bit more. And we're going to continue again to monitor her. I've been monitoring her pretty much all summer long as she's had those issues to deal with. The one thing that I'm really happy about is her COPD issues seem to have improved. They've improved significantly. One of the things we look for when we have a COPD horse is we have this area here in front of the hip where the diaphragm, and there's a muscle here. And often you can see them in and out heaving or really trying hard to breathe. So you see that muscle working really hard. There's no ridge here. That muscle is not a hard ridge anymore. And I don't see her trying to breathe at all. It's not moving in and out at all. So that's very, very nice. She's breathing very normally. I don't hear any wheezing at all. I was hearing wheezing earlier in the year. And she's on a round bale, which is really surprising because normally when they're on a round bale, they get dust from the bale. They stick their nose right into the bale, and it causes inhalation of the dust particles, and then it irritates the lungs. So she is actually doing really, really well on the round bale, and I'm quite happy about that, because if the round bale doesn't work out, we have to feed her separately on square bales where she can eat from the ground and not be putting her head into the dustbin. And I did try something different this year. I put a net over my round bale, which prevents her from putting her head inside into the middle of the bale, and therefore she's not inhaling that dust. And I think that has really contributed to her improvement in her breathing and her overall health. So I'm really, really happy about that. So she has gained some weight, but she still has some gaining to go. And if I step back here, you can just see she does not look nice and round. She's got some angles. There's definitely some bone protruding that I don't like to see. So she definitely needs more weight. And I didn't look at her tail head. So let's go look at that as well. You can see that this tail head is prominent here. There's a definite protrusion of the bone. So she needs definitely more weight over the bum. This is a quarter horse mare. She normally has a nice round bum, and it's not round because there's weight missing here. There's some condition missing here. So I would put her at a 3 on the condition on the Henneke scale. So she definitely needs a few hundred pounds. So we're going to have some more work to do. Now, the one problem I have, or the one challenge I have with her, she's an older horse. So putting weight on an older horse, and we're in winter, is a significant challenge because she's not going to be absorbing the same nutrients that a young horse would. We have expensive urine with older horses, so she'll be peeing out the protein and the vitamins and minerals. So I have to bump them up to give her more in order for her to absorb the amount that she needs. The other issue is she's outside 24/7 in the winter, so she's working all the time to stay warm. And today we have a nice day. It's above 0 here Celsius, so she's not having to work hard today, which is really nice. So I don't have to have a blanket on her. But normally I sometimes double blanket her when the temperature really drops to minus 25 Celsius, just so that she has additional help to stay warm, because she doesn't have the fat, the body condition to help her stay warm. Like most horses have their winter coat and body condition, which helps them to insulate them from the cold. So what she's got is the blanket. She's got 2 blankets to keep her warm, plus 24 hour access to hay, so she can always eat. Eating generates heat. When the gut ferments and digests the hay, they create their own heat. And the longer that we can have that hay in the gut, so having something like alfalfa with a higher protein count that is longer, takes longer to digest, means that it's longer in the gut. So therefore the heat, the horse is making heat for longer periods of time. So it really helps her in the wintertime. So I'm going to continue doing that, but I may also want to add some fat to her diet. So I could add flax or a concentrated feed with the protein level and the maybe additional fat that could help with that. But I'm pretty happy with the progress that she's made so far, and we're going to have to continue monitoring her and checking to make sure that she's going to continue to gain weight, so that come spring I'll have a better horse with better body condition. But generally, I'm really, really happy because I was on the verge. I was right on the fence putting her down. So if we can also keep the COPD under control, that would be also a good thing for her. So here is my 5th horse. He is my Suffield Mustang, and he's also an older horse in my herd. He is 20, and he's one of the bully. He's actually my number 1 leader or horse in the herd. So I took him out and put him with this second horse here, the Arab, because the Arab is also lower ranking. So I wanted to take the lower ranking horse out and the bully out, so that I only had 1 bully in that smaller herd of 4, and that way everybody got better access to food. So this guy has actually had it really good this winter. So he's an older horse, but he's looking really, really good. Now, he did have some ribs earlier in the fall, and I'm having a good quick look at him. He still has a little bit of a dip here. He's got a bit of a prominent wither, but there's a little bit of a dip from the wither to the neck. So this could be a little more filled in, but he's doing fairly well. If I'm looking at his rib cage, again with the winter coat, I don't see, now his coat's pretty flat because I just took the blanket off, so the blanket was matting the hair down. I don't see any ribs on that at all. And now we're going to do a little feel, running my hand down the side with a little bit of pressure, and there's really good meat coverage on this. There's no rib. I don't feel any ribs. I can feel the very last one here, but he's really, really good. And this nice hip bone here also doesn't protrude at all. So he's looking very good. He's got a fat pocket here, down here on the elbow. He's got actually generally a pretty nice neck. Could Could use a little bit more here, but we mentioned that already. So now going down the back, his back is fairly flat. When I put my hand over it, I'm trying to look for the backbone. And if I do that cupping of the backbone right behind the wither here, there's a little bit of a cup. It's not too pronounced, so it's fairly what's the word? Fairly flat. But I'm looking. There still is a bit of a gap here under my hand, so he could use a little bit more. And if we go back over the bum here, there's no protrusion at all from the tail head. He's got a nice, I don't know if you can see that, the lights really, his tail head is really, really nice. His tail's pretty buried, and his bum is nice and round. So he's looking pretty good. Now he's getting his own food with this other horse, so there's nobody really to compete with other than this lower ranking Arab that's with him. So he has no access issues getting access to hay and food. And he's also on some alfalfa pellets, because I'm also feeding the Arab alfalfa pellets to bring his hay up, and so the two of them are kind of getting the same diet, and he's benefited from that. So the ribs that he had earlier have filled in nicely, so I'm really happy with him. He's doing quite well, and I would put him very close to a 5 on the Henneke scale, because he's nice and round. He doesn't look bad at all. I'm pretty happy with him, and as an older horse as well, he's doing really, really well for his age. And now we're at the last horse, the number 6 horse in my herd. This is my oldest guy. He's 23, an Arab gelding. And I've always had issues with his weight. He's been a hard keeper from day one. I got him when he was a middle-aged horse, unbroke, kind of dangerous because he was afraid of everything, and they were having trouble training him. So I kind of got him for free, and he's become a very lovely horse. So he is older and kind of he's got a high metabolism and some anxiety issues. Mainly because he just hadn't been exposed to the world. So he's become a lot calmer as I've taken him out and taken him out into the world and exposed him to more different environments, and he's learned a lot of different things. So now he's doing really well. But I always had issues with ribs and protrusion. This hip bone was always an issue to me because it always was protruding. So just looking at him generally, he does have a sway back, and that's just age. It's not really something that I can do much about. So I add extra padding to his saddle in that spot to fill in this hole here, because he's got also a higher wither, which makes that even look worse. But there is, you get your nose out of the way there, buddy. There is a sway back going on with him. So that's something to take into consideration. So just looking, I can't really, he's eating hay here. So there is a bit of a dip from the wither to the neck, but we can't really see it very well because he's got his head down eating hay. There is a nice fleshy pocket of fat here behind the elbow. So that's really good to see. And I'm happy. I do feel a little bit of a backbone, but it is fairly flat here. So I'm pretty happy about how this is nicely filled in. There. There is a bit of a cup, but it's not a bad one. So he's doing pretty well. And again, if we go down the ribs and look for ribs to the hip bone here, I don't feel any ribs until I get to the last. I can feel the last 2. So this is really, really good because he had more ribs earlier in the year, and I've got him on alfalfa pellets and some square bales here that are about a 12% protein. So he's getting a pretty good diet. They also have access to some concentrate that I throw at them every now and again. So they're getting some additional fat from that. So this hip bone has really filled in nicely. I'm really quite happy about that. But there are still some angles. Like you can see there's a bit of a point here at the hip. joint, and there is a little bit of tailbone or tailhead. I think you can see that with the light. So I can see this tailhead here. He's never really had a round bum. Would be nice to fill this in a bit more. He's always been a challenge. So he's always been, I would call him a really hard keeper, just with his anxiety issues. In my herd, if something happened, like a tree branch would crack, everybody's eating, everyone's got their head down, and he would put his head up to see what that noise was, and he would stand there for 40 minutes until he felt comfortable to eat again. But in the meantime, all the other guys are eating the hay, and he's missing out on the calories that he could have been getting. But that was just his anxiety of making sure that, you know, he wasn't in any danger. Another little story on him, when I got him home and I put him in the paddock and I had him on a water bucket for water, and the water bucket sat under some trees, and some of the tree branches were touching the roof of the barn, so we decided to take the trees out. And when the canopy changed, because we removed the trees, he would not go to his water bucket and drink because, oh my God, now there were monsters there. So I had to actually go out and walk him to the water bucket to make sure that he got water to drink. And I did that for about 4 or 5 days. And even after 4 or 5 days, he still wouldn't go and drink. So I ended up moving the water bucket because I just didn't want to risk a colic, so that he always had access to water. So anyway, I'm happy about his weight gain. He's looking really good for his age. He also had a Potomac issue earlier this year, in the fall, the late fall, and he missed about 4 days of eating. He just would not eat. He had a fever and just didn't have an appetite whatsoever. So getting food into him during that time was really hard. So he lost some weight there as well, which was a challenge based on the fact that he's already a hard keeper. So I was a bit anxious about that, but it has come back quite nicely. And I'm really, really happy because the ribs here have filled in and he's much rounder. So he still has a few angles. Now it's just maybe the way he's standing there, that withers his withers are really prominent there with the shoulder as well because of the position of his leg. But he does have some angles still on the hind end that that we want to fill in. And I would put him at a 4, just because there also is a pocket here as well behind the wither, and he's got some of those last ribs that need to get filled in. But he's doing really, really well, and I'm quite happy, especially with his age. He's a geriatric guy, and the fact that he's an additional challenge with his higher metabolism and anxiety issues. I never did have him scoped for ulcers. Never had issues with riding him or putting a saddle on and girthing him up. So I just never really thought that there would be ulcers there, but that wouldn't be a bad thing to do if you have a horse with anxiety, to have to do a little ulcer test on them and see if maybe that was an issue that was contributing to their weight loss. So that's something to think about as well. Anyway, I am happy with him, and he's doing really, really well, and we're going to continue to feed him up through the spring, and he will probably pick up even more weight. But this seems to be working well for him, so I'm pretty happy about that. Thank you very much. This is the end of my video, and thank you very much for watching and listening to all this yammering on. Hopefully it was helpful to you. I couldn't cover everything, but I hope that I raised some points and gave you some information to help you with issues that you might be having in your herd. Thank you again.